body of Dylan Rounds has been found.
Brenner pleaded guilty to second-degree murder.
The man convicted is a violent career criminal. Why was he roaming the streets free? There's a known criminal, a violent criminal, somebody that's been involved with attempted murder, living right here.
With an active felony warrant for aggravated assault.
Had they locked him up, could Dylan still be here? That's the question.
19-year-old Dylan Rounds had a sweet smile and disposition to match. His mom says he had a work ethic you just don't find in most young people today. He cared more about working on his farm than playing video games. That farm that he had worked so hard to buy is also where he mysteriously vanished and where his parents believe he was brutally murdered. The man convicted is a violent career criminal who, despite a laundry list of convictions, was walking free on the same streets as this innocent teen.
This is Dylan Rounds, and he is currently missing out of Lucin, Utah, and his family needs your help if you're from the Idaho, Utah, Nevada area.
Some breaking news in the Dylan Rounds case. James Brenner, the man who was squatting on property near Dylan's farm out in Lucin, Utah, was charged today with murder. James Brenner is charged with aggravated murder and desecration of a human body. He limped into the courtroom wearing an orange jumpsuit, handcuffs, and cuffs around his ankles. We have some breaking news to bring you right now. The body of Dylan Rounds has been found. Dylan Rounds, his remains have been found in the remote area of Lucin, Utah. As part of a plea agreement, Brenner led the investigators out to the site where the remains were, and they have been recovered.
Brenner will serve 3 to 30 years in prison for killing the young man from Idaho and dumping his body in the remote Utah desert. Brenner pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and 2 counts of possession of a firearm by a restricted person. Brenner had nothing to say during the sentencing hearing today.
Brenner had an outstanding warrant for allegedly beating a man with a lawn chair. He had also served time for attempted murder. Why was he roaming the streets free? Across America, woke lawmakers, mayors, prosecutors, and judges have lost control of their towns and cities. They're implementing no cash bail and not holding convicted criminals accountable.
Chaotic scenes from Oakland, California, a city now notorious for its violent crime. Oakland Mayor Sheng Tao, who's been in office just 1 year, already facing a recall from dissatisfied voters. Police say they're working alongside community members and law enforcement partners at all levels to deploy resources strategically to combat criminal activity.
A violent carjacking spree, the latest senseless crime to rock the nation's capital. Mohammed, a Grubhub delivery driver, has seen and experienced enough. Many blame what they see as lenient laws that put repeat offenders back on the street, as well as a drop in arrests and prosecutions.
Well, that is all too typical. The justice system has seemingly gone soft. It is putting perpetrators' rights ahead of victim rights. When you look at Dylan's photo, you may be reminded of your own sons. His mother, Candice, says her child paid the price of our country's flawed justice system with his life. And all she has left of him is a pair of his blood-stained boots.
My son is Dylan Jamie Rounds. At the age of 18, Dylan was able to purchase 620 acres to start his own farm. That's how passionate he was about it. He was a very hardworking kid. From the time he was little, that's what he wanted to do. He wasn't your typical teenager. Dylan was last seen on May 26, 2022. He spoke with his grandmother on May 28th. Dylan was moving his truck to the shed because it was raining. The property that the shed is on is also where James Brenner was squatting. On May 30th, we found out that nobody in the family had spoken to Dylan, so we all headed to his farm, and I reported him missing on the way to his farm. When we got to Dylan's farm, it was so unusual that he was not around. We knew there was something off. It was the beginning of a nightmare immediately. 2 hours into the search and rescue called Justin and I over, Dylan's father, because they'd found a pair of boots behind a dirt mound. We both looked at those boots and looked at each other, and our hearts dropped. We knew instantly they were Dylan's boots. There was a spot on them that appeared to be blood. James Brenner moved over after Dylan had already purchased his land and started working it. He was not the type of man that would make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Come to find out about James Brenner, he has a violent past that stretches from Maine to Nevada and back to Utah. He served time for attempted murder before. After finding out about James Brenner's violent past, everything made a little more sense in our son's disappearance. It felt like I should have known. As a mother, you feel like you should know. Brenner had a felony arrest warrant in Box Elder County from 2021. I get very frustrated with knowing these criminals that are walking free because warrants are not executed, and that is what led to our son's homicide.
Well, joining me now is Dylan's mother, Candice Cooley, as well as Nate Eaton, a reporter for East Idaho News, who has been covering this case from the ground since day one. Thank you both for being here. And Candice, I'm glad to meet you, but I'm really sorry for the circumstances.
Yes.
It was May 28th, 2022, that Dylan called his grandmother, right?
Correct.
And that was the last time anyone heard from him.
Correct. He tried to call James Brenner after he hung up with his grandma, but he didn't answer to let him know he was bringing the truck onto the property. Okay.
You say that the investigation has just been a nightmare.
Yeah, I would say lack of investigation. On the first day is when Dylan's boots were found. The very first day, and they were literally thrown on the back of a side-by-side, and everybody shrugged their shoulders and just kept moseying around.
Really?
Yeah, it was an hour and a half into the search and rescue found him. And the search and rescue team was amazing, right? That's when the sheriffs that were there should have taken over, with blood on his boots especially.
But they didn't.
No, and they were talking to Brenner and just moseying around. It was so strange.
Nate, is this just lack of resources, small town lack of urgency? Why did this get off to such a slow and bad start?
I think it's a little bit of that, what you mentioned. Think about a kid disappearing in the middle of nowhere. This is a desert. Nobody's out there. He disappears. 2 or 3 days go by. Candice contacts me as a news company and says, please do something. Get the word out. My son is gone. Then they find his boots by a pile of dirt, and on those boots is blood. I mean, you would think that the urgency there would have been escalated a little bit, but still nothing.
You know, here's a map of the area, and you're saying that Brenner was kind of squatting on this land, right?
Correct.
He had a camper here, and how far is it to here behind this rock that his boots were found? What's that distance across there?
It's not very far, maybe 70 yards, and it's a big dirt mound is what it is.
Okay, so all they have to do is punch up one thing to discover that there's a known criminal, a violent criminal, somebody that's been involved with attempted murder.
With an active felony warrant for aggravated assault in the county of Box Elder.
But yet nobody says,
No.
might want to talk to this person.
Oh, they talked to him like he was their friend.
Okay.
It wasn't even about questions about like, when's the last time you seen Dylan, really stuff like that. It was like general chit chat about the weather, and it was bizarre.
Wow. All right, let's take a break. Coming up, Dylan's parents say that after he disappeared, they watched the convicted felon who lived next door, 70 yards from where the boots were found, remove trash bags from their son's truck. We'll talk about what that's all about next. Every notification on your phone announces another wave, a hurricane threatening lives, an East Coast labor strike threatening our supply chain, an international conflict threatening our peace, or an assassination attempt threatening our democracy. Supply chains for medications can be unreliable, but there's a way to feel safer in this uncertain world. Please research how to get your own supply of medications in case of a small or more significant emergency. I urge you to invest in a JACE case today. It's an emergency medication kit containing life-saving antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. You'll fill out a simple online evaluation and customize your case to include add-ons like ivermectin, EpiPens, and more. The time to prepare is right now. Mention my name and you can receive a discount on your JACE case. Just go to jace.com and enter promo PHIL at checkout. That's promo code PHIL at jace.com. Get the right meds the moment you need them.
Last night it was announced, it was filed that James Brenner, a man from North Dakota originally, is charged with 1 count of aggravated murder, a first-degree felony in Utah, and 1 count of abuse or desecration of a human body, a third-degree felony. On or about May 28th, 2022, the defendant did 1, intentionally or knowingly cause the death of another. James Brenner has a violent history. He has faced charges elsewhere. He's been in jail on a firearms violation because he's a convicted felon. Count 2, abuse or desecration of a human body, a third-degree felony that on or about May 28th, 2022, the defendant did intentionally and unlawfully disturb, move, remove, conceal, or destroy a dead human body or any part of it.
Well, tonight, a man with a lengthy criminal history has been convicted with the murder of Utah teen Dylan Rounds. This is another sad example of why we need to be critical of progressive policies that allow repeat offenders to go free. Dylan's mom says the man not only slipped by law enforcement before Dylan's murder, but also right after. Candice, you saw him removing things from your son's truck, trash bags.
From the shed that his truck was pulled in. June 2nd, James Brenner pulled Dylan's grain truck out of the shed and began removing items from the shed in garbage bags and putting them in the back of his own personal pickup, with law enforcement watching.
And this was after Dylan had disappeared, Dr. Phil. This was several days after the fact.
How was this not part of a crime scene? Or
So nothing in this whole ordeal, nothing has ever been taped off a crime scene. Not when Dylan's gun came back, not when the key fob came back, not when the boots were found, not when the garbage was removed, never. And so the officer that was with me, he went up and he asked him, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm spring cleaning." Those pictures of that shed were after the supposed spring cleaning. He was cleaning evidence.
he was spring cleaning someone else's shed?
Yeah.
So what are we looking at here? This is inside?
That's the inside. That's after spring cleaning.
So if you're going to spring clean, aren't you going to clean? That doesn't look very clean.
He was taking out specific stuff. Brenner was a pig. He never cleaned anything. That whole place was full of beer cans from him and garbage. Whatever he was taking out of that shed that day was specifically for a reason.
And one of the things that you're upset about, that I'm upset about, Nate, you're furious about, because I've heard you speak about it, is he had open warrants at this time. And that's what we're talking about. We've got a system that has someone that has a violent history, and he's out on the street, and the best predictor of future behavior is relevant past behavior, and he has a history of assault, attempted murder charges, but he's out walking around and nobody knows it. On June 3rd, as far back as '86, 2 counts of assault with intent to murder, possession of a deadly weapon. Now, the outcome of that arrest is unknown.
Right.
We can't find that out. About 6 weeks later, assault with intent to murder. Outcome of that arrest is unknown. Then we go to November 1st, maliciously injured and assault with intent to murder, rape, and rob, served 33 months in prison. So we do know the outcome of that one. So within a year, 1, 2, 3 different entries on his record, all alleging violence. And one, he serves 33 months in prison. Then we jump 2 years, violation of probation. So he's offended again. Outcome of that arrest, unknown. So that's in Maryland. Okay, now we go to North Dakota. June 16, 2002, DUI, pled guilty. June 15, 2011, assault misdemeanor, that got dismissed. March 20, 2017, failed to yield at an intersection, fugitive from justice, probation with malicious shooting, outcome of arrest unknown. February 20th, 21, aggravated assault, third-degree felony, paid bail, released on outdated warrant.
So that warrant was not a paid bail. He was arrested on that on February 11th, and they did release him on his own. He was back out on the property within hours. And they had it in April of 2021. The judge had amended it and said if you don't appear before such date at Box Elder, it goes to a non-bondable warrant. And so you have Box Elder who finally arrests him on June 11th, and then you have Box Elder court system who doesn't even read their own paperwork that says it's non-bondable and just immediately lets him out on his own recognizance to go back to the place where my son was murdered.
And that was a year before Dylan disappeared.
The warrant was issued.
That's your tax dollars at work.
Had they locked him up and put him behind bars on the non-bailable warrant, could Dylan still be here? That's the question.
That is the question. Well, coming up, investigators retrieved Dylan's phone from the bottom of a pond. On it, they found a horrifying recording. We'll tell you what it was when we come back.
I've had a lot of people text me. Just last night I was texting some people, and they're trying to help, and I think they are, but a lot of them out there don't want to talk to the police.
You don't want to use all of your time to chase down all these rabbit holes.
We have been a lot, and I will, but I'd like some help with law enforcement to look into when they hear some things, it seems like they just think it's nothing.
That has been a problem. We have had some stuff that actually needed to be looked into that they've called into Box Elder and they don't get a response.
We had no idea what to do or where to go. We've never done this before.
Yeah, and we didn't have help from law enforcement. I mean, it's like we said, we are not exaggerating when we say they left us in the desert.
The parents of Dylan Rounds have been desperate for answers since their son mysteriously vanished in 2022. But they do have a video recovered from his cell phone, and it reveals some very telling information about what may have happened to him.
A digital forensic download of the phone was conducted and led to the discovery of a time-lapse video. The video showed defendant with blood stains on his arms and shirt as he's cleaning a gun. So Dylan's phone recorded, according to this, James Brenner cleaning a gun, and Brenner had blood stains on his arms and on his shirt. Was the phone purposely turned on? Did James Brenner turn it on? Did James Brenner not know it was turned on? Did Dylan somehow, before he died, turn the phone on and record a long video? I mean, that is a needle in a haystack type of evidence.
Candice, have you seen that video?
No.
And you don't want to see that?
Nope, I have no reason to.
What is the impact it has on you at this point?
Well, there's a couple ways I've looked at it. If things went the way they should have in the beginning, we probably would have had Dylan in a matter of days. I honestly feel like we were probably walking over him before Box Elder removed us from the property. But if that would have happened, it wouldn't have brought my son back, right? And so now we have this fight for Dylan so that we can change laws and make a difference, because just getting Dylan back, that doesn't change anything. It's going to continue to happen to other families until people stand up. And you don't know if the person sitting next to you is a violent criminal. You don't know if they have a warrant, and with law enforcement not doing their job. And then when they do, the justice system working against them and just releasing them, what does it do just to say we could have had Dylan back? Let's make a change.
It's not unusual. The killer will try to trade the information for some lesser sentence or certainly some consideration. Do you think Brenner has or will try to make that kind of a trade?
We will not make a trade that gives that man any chance of getting out. People see him, you know, that one video that Nate filmed when he went to court with us, that he looks weak and he's meek and it's all an act. The man is strong and he's a big burly guy. Yeah, he's lost weight because he's in jail, but the limp and the twitching eye, it's all an act. If he is let out, even in 15 years, he's going to turn to crime, right? Because he doesn't have any family. He doesn't have anybody to go to. He's going to get stuck in a halfway house, and then he's going to go harm somebody else to get what he wants. And we will not make a deal with the devil.
You know, we talk about this progressive court system where the basic argument from that point of view is that the system has failed the criminal. But we have to talk about whether criminals will reoffend or not. And according to the U.S. Bureau of Justice, 52% of people on probation in 2020 were felons. And federal offenders with violent priors are more likely to recidivate than nonviolent. And 53% of people arrested for murder had prior convictions. And 67% of federal violent offenders who are released get rearrested. So that's 2/3. And has the system failed these people in some way? Maybe it has. But my point is you have to suppress the behavior before you try to rebuild the individual. It may be that the system has failed them, but you cannot take these people and release them on an unsuspecting, innocent society without telling anybody and expect there to be a good outcome. You have to suppress the behavior unless and until you are at a position where you can say, I can predict they're not going to reoffend. And unless you have empirical data to say that, you are turning known predators out onto innocent people. This is not hard math. Coming up, Candice says she searched her son's truck and home herself, and what she found chilled her to the bone. That's next. Are you overwhelmed with back taxes or unfiled returns? Well, you don't have to face them alone. Tax Network USA is here to help. Tax Network USA, the nation's premier tax relief firm, has negotiated over $1 billion in tax relief for clients. Our services include penalty forgiveness, hardship programs, and offer in compromise solutions for lump sum settlements. Whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, our experts are ready to assist you. Even if you're behind on taxes due to missing personal or business records, Tax Network USA can guide you through the process. Protect your financial security with guidance from Tax Network USA. Our experts provide strategic advice on reducing or eliminating your tax debt. To schedule a complimentary consultation, call 1-800-958-1000. Visit tnusa.com/Dr. Phil. Don't let the IRS's aggressive tactics control your life. Empower yourself with Tax Network USA's support and take charge of your financial future. Visit tnusa.com/Dr. Phil today.
On the first day of the search, we broke out the back window of Dylan's pickup to try to locate his guns. Neither of them were inside the pickup. From there, we searched the camper thoroughly, and there was no gun or key fob to Dylan's pickup. But the gun came back and was laying on the bathroom counter in plain sight. And my heart sank again. How did it come back? We knew whoever had harmed our son was out there searching with us, and it was so disturbing and eerie to look around at everybody and think, who was it? It began to feel like a game of Clue.
Okay, Candice, you actually went in and dug around, and you know your son,
Yeah.
and you know what's his pattern and what's not, and what he does. What did you find?
We specifically were looking for his guns, like we said, so Dylan's father, Justin, broke out the back window of the pickup because his pickup was locked, which is totally just another, like, oh, red flag. Dylan never locked it, and his pistol was always right there next to him on the door, but his clip was always in the center console. Neither were there, so we went in the camper and searched everywhere. On his bathroom sink was his gun case, and you know, you're just talking a little camper bathroom sink. So I opened it, I looked, medicine cabinet, we tear the whole thing apart, nothing. The next day we got sent down a rabbit hole, and we all went to Montello, and that would have been Tuesday. On Wednesday, Dylan's little brother and best friend went into his camper, and they called and said, "Do you want me to bring you Dylan's pistol?" And I was like, "What?" Now, mind you, they did not know we were looking for it because they didn't enter until later. They had no clue we were looking for his guns. And it was laying right there by the gun case with the clip out of it on the bathroom counter. And Dylan never would have taken that out of his pickup, ever. So we bagged it up, and it just, we were so distraught, and we were, no help, no guidance. And so we're all just kind of running through scenarios in our head, like, who did this? We had a bunch of the locals out. So at that time, it kind of spanned that, there's 15, 20 locals out there helping us. It could be any of them. So Detective Bauer and I went out to Dylan's camper. We took pictures of where the gun was found. And then the next day, we go out, and we're in and out of Dylan's camper. We were just everywhere. We were desperate, right? Did we miss something? And the key fob to Dylan's pickup is sitting in the same exact place. And at that point, that just kind of confirmed everything to me.
So somebody brought those items back. Mm-hmm. You're there. You looked in that spot, mm-hmm. and you don't miss a gun.
No, especially when you're specifically looking for it. And like I said, then we have the proof from the sheriff's office because they took pictures the next day, key fobs in the same exact spot.
The other interesting thing too, Dr. Phil, is this is out in the desert. It's dusty, but there had been a bunch of rain, so it was muddy. Dylan's truck was power washed.
Yeah.
It was completely clean except the wheel.
2 wheel wells. They missed 2 wheel wells when they cleaned it. And Dylan did not wash his pickup. In fact, my husband has a picture of his phone that my son sent that said, it was like October 2020. It said, "First time I washed my pickup since I bought it," and he bought it like almost a year ago. I mean, completely just, and you could see the pressure washer marks. Yeah. And it was in 4-wheel drive, and his transfer case was broken. He cussed it all the time. He'd never put his pickup in 4-low, and he couldn't even got in where the seat was. His knees would have hit the dash. He couldn't even got in. So there, it just, everything was just adding up. So that Sunday on June 5th, we were trying to figure out what to do. And so I texted the Box Elder detective and I said, "Hey, should we take Dylan's pickup home? What should we do?" And I got told, "You folks do what you need to do." And I still have that message on my phone to this day. That's what I was told.
Coming up, the way we sentence criminals and deal with victims needs to change. Prison time needs to properly reflect the crime. Rehabilitation needs to be enforced upon release. We'll talk to a lawmaker and former judge about how to make that happen next.
Box Elder County's investigation in the beginning was absolutely negligent and disorganized to the point that there really wasn't one. They just left us out there. All of Dylan's family was organizing everything. We were doing all the searching, all the interviewing. We just did it all. No evidence was gathered in Dylan's case until almost a month after his disappearance. It was just an absolute nightmare.
Tonight, Dylan Rounds' mother, Candice Cooley, is a real-world example of why we need to stop prioritizing criminals over victims. The man convicted of his murder was a violent offender walking free and committing other crimes. We are living in a world where criminals, and it's not in every venue and it's not with every judge, it's not with every prosecutor, but too many are no longer being held to account. Joining the conversation now is Tyler Clancy from Utah House of Representatives, also a former police officer, and Erleigh Norville Wiley, a former judge and the current DA of Kaufman County, Texas. Thank you both for being here. I really appreciate it.
We're glad to be here. Thank you.
You've been listening to everything that we're talking about here, and one of the things that I'm concerned about is the fact that we've got too many violent criminals on the street that have not been held to account for crimes that they have committed, and then they're reoffending before they're ever held to account for what they've done previously. What's our way out of this?
First we'd have to say to Dylan's mother that's here how sorry we are about what's happened in her family. It's awful. But what can we do about it is what you just said, is hold people accountable for the crimes that they've committed, educate the public, because that's going to be our jury panel, And so as we educate them and they talk about punishment, then they will know the sentences that are involved. If I looked at this case, because you provided the information, this offender, I would consider him a violent offender. And in Texas, he had prior felonies. And so he's the type of offender deserving as a habitual offender to get a serious sentence. But there was a gap in this, right? He was out on a bond. And so that's another issue too with a violent background.
And you can take that into account as a judge, right? I mean, you can look at their criminal history.
Yes. He wouldn't have been on a bond that I would have made, so.
And even after they arrested him on June 20th on the gun charges, this was after they arrested him on the aggravated assault charge, they again set bond. But the feds got him before Box Elder was able to let him out. The feds nabbed him, or he would have been out again.
And you know what? To build on what Candice has said, really, I think what we're looking at is the pendulum has swung pretty far in the other direction. We've got to a point in our society where when someone commits a crime, we look at the criminal and say, well, what are these different factors that played into it, and completely ignore the innocent public. Any criminal justice system that doesn't begin and end with keeping innocent people safe from repeat violent offenders is a failure.
Well, there's no question about it. And one of the most fundamental principles in psychology is you don't reward bad behavior.
Yes.
You have to consequate what happens. I mean, if somebody does A, they need to be able to predict B. Not some of the time, but all the time. It starts with children. They need to understand, if I do A, I get B. I do C, I get D. I mean, that's the most fundamental human behavior that you can imagine. And we don't seem to be able to figure that out in the justice system.
You hit the nail on the head. You don't have to be a criminologist to figure out what those next steps are going to be. I've been there. I've arrested an individual who, it was a domestic violence situation. He fought the police. He goes to jail. Before we're done typing the report, where do you think he is? He's back at the house. You don't have to be an expert to understand these fundamentals of human behavior.
All right, well, coming up, Tyler is going to tell us about his new bill to help victims just like Candice. That's next. These days, too many prosecutors and judges think they are being compassionate when they release repeat offenders. But who are they being compassionate for? What are they really doing in putting violent perpetrators back into the public sphere among an innocent and unsuspecting public? And I've said, look, maybe the system has failed these people. I get it. Maybe they have. Maybe they weren't protected when they were children. Maybe they needed some kind of training. Maybe they needed some kind of chance, and they didn't get it. I understand that, and that is a reasonable goal to change, but you need to change it in anticipation of what's going to happen. For those that are already there, you have to suppress and contain that behavior. Somebody that gets shot in the head, somebody that gets killed, raped, home invasion, whatever, they don't care that this person had a rough childhood. You need to change the childhood of the next group coming up. You need to give this person an opportunity to change their ways, but you don't do it while they are raping and killing children. You just don't allow, that's not how you fix this system. Now, Tyler says he's filed House Bill number 308 to streamline the judicial process for crime victims. Talk about what you're doing.
Well, thanks for that lead in, Dr. Phil. Really, Candice has spoken her story as a mother, but you're also a mouthpiece for hundreds of families, not just in the state of Utah, but across the nation. Because I'll tell you, when someone's life is turned upside down by crime, it's not over. There's a long process to go, as you alluded to at the beginning of this. House Bill 308 seeks to make sure that the victim and their family has someone with them every single step of the way. So when a trial's pushed back for 8 months, you know why. You don't have to go searching for answers. We need to make sure that there's someone there communicating with the family every single step of the way to make sure that they're not collateral damage in the process.
The truth is, some of these people can get arrested too quickly. You get one bite at the apple, and if you don't have a body, and you don't have some physical evidence connecting a suspect to the crime, it can sometimes take time, but they need to build a case before they arrest, because if they arrest too quickly, it can get really bad.
You're right, Dr. Phil, of course. But in that process, and I think that's what the representative is alluding to, is at least the family maybe not need to know the details of the investigation, but why it's taking longer. Because that's what we're finding out with the families. They're not in the loop, or they have a victim assistance coordinator from the police. Then they meet at the DA's office. And so they feel like they're in the shuffle. And to build on what you've been saying, we're concerned. Yes, absolutely. In this country, you're absolutely guaranteed certain rights. But the most important right is for everybody to be able to exercise their free rights in a free society. So the innocent victims you're speaking about, their rights are being violated. And we never take that into account. We're looking at the defendant. And of course, there's a proper place for that, but the family's the one left to pick up the pieces. Why is it taking the trial so long? Why is this guy back out on the streets? Why did he post a bond? Why did the judge set the bond so low? What factors were taking into place? And if I'm a family member, you feel like you're getting run around.
Yeah, well, we got, I'll give you an example of kind of some of the stuff they put us through. So on December 11th of 2022, we were asked to meet at the Box Elder Sheriff's Office and with prosecution. This was before charges. They were going to show us all the evidence that they had enough to charge him. We were not shown any of the evidence. We were actually asked to have Dylan declared legally deceased to make their case easier. This was 6 months after the fact. No body, no charges. With a victim's right advocate right there, that's what they brought us in and asked us to do.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, I actually still am a police officer. So when the legislative session ends, I jump right back into it. Behind every badge is a human being.
Right.
And humans make mistakes. But we ought to create systems to make sure that those mistakes don't re-traumatize victims' families and make sure we have professionals with you throughout the process.
Yeah. You see the result of this, and if you look at who's doing what in their jobs. As the crime rate in Oakland, California skyrockets, California Governor Gavin Newsom plans to deploy state attorneys to boost law enforcement capacity and is vowing to harshly prosecute suspects in violent crimes. Now, the city's woke district attorney, Pamela Price, has been blamed for the soaring crime rates after promoting liberal policies like lower jail terms to increase equity in the city. A portion of Newsom's statement reads, "An arrest isn't enough. Justice demands that suspects are appropriately prosecuted. Individuals must be held accountable for their crimes using the full and appropriate weight of the law." Now, he started talking this way right after he started being considered as a presidential candidate. Wonder if that has anything to do with it. Because if you look at the rising crime rates, Oakland isn't the only city seeing a rise in crime attributed to woke policies and beliefs. New data shows a rise in crime in mid-sized cities. According to research advocacy group Our America, in 2022, Pittsburgh had 71 homicides, the highest number in decades. They also saw a 46% increase in shootings from 2020 to 2021. Aggravated assaults nearly doubled in Henderson, Nevada in 2022. Robberies also jumped by 91% that year. And the group who conducted the study attributes the change to the defund the police movement. And, they push all of this to defund the police. Then it all goes to hell and they start running 100% overtime. They start recruiting, trying to do everything they can to catch up. It just doesn't work. And people that have businesses and live in the cities, they don't want less police. They want order. They want more police. James Brenner has been convicted of the murder of Dylan Rounds. Dylan is the latest victim to have paid the ultimate price for the failure of our justice system. A system where career criminals are given weak sentences and are let free to reoffend. I talk about this in my book, We've Got Issues. You hear all of these people that are saying, look, we've got too much incarceration. Look at the cost. Look at all the people. We lead the world in incarceration. That may be true, but have you looked at the cost of decarceration? Have you looked at the cost on society of turning these people out onto the street and letting them victimize innocent people again? Candice believes if James Brenner had been behind bars serving time for one of his many offenses, her son would still be alive today. Is that true? I can't say that for sure, but if there are gaps in the information from one state to another state, from one court, from one judge to another judge, that gap needs to be closed. We've got the information systems to do that, right?
I agree with you, Dr. Phil, and that's one thing we worked on in the Texas legislature with the new system, to give all that information so that the judges have that at magistration, because the best predictor, as you said, of future conduct is your past. And that doesn't mean that it can't change, but that's not fair to the victims and the society that's out there. That is, it's just not right. And so we balance that, but a violent offender is going to be a danger to the people that are out here in our society, in our communities. And we're gonna stop that. And that's what this family is making a call for. Because Dylan, if he would have made contact with that individual, may still be here.
Yeah, it's a tragic story. Look, I want to thank my guest, and I want to thank all of you for watching this, and thank you for being here today.